Most businesses don't think about crisis communication until they're already in one. And by the time negative posts are spreading, reviews are piling up, and your page one looks like a disaster, it's already too late to start planning. This video is about what you should have in place before any of that even happens. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Jordan, and in this video, I'm going to walk you through a crisis communication plan, everything you should know before, during, and after the crisis itself, and laying out a very basic plan so that you can avoid any crises in the future. So let's jump right in. So let's ask ourselves first what a crisis actually looks like for a business. Now forget the corporate textbook definition. A crisis for most businesses isn't going to be a product recall or some sort of CEO scandal on the evening news. It's a competitor who decided to target you with a coordinated smear campaign across social media. It's a disgruntled customer who goes viral. It's a false accusation that starts ranking on Google for you or your brand name. It's a Reddit thread that shows up every time a potential client searches you. And these are real cases that small to mid-sized businesses face all the time. And they can do just as much damage as anything you read about in a business school case study. The difference is nobody prepares for these kind of attacks. Why most businesses have no plan? And why most businesses don't have plans, you might be asking? Well, the reason is simple. Most business owners assume that this crisis will never ever happen to them. And if it does, they just figure that they'll deal with it in the moment. The problem with that is by the time you realize you need a plan, you're already reacting instead of responding. And there's a massive difference between the two because reacting is emotional. It's slow and it almost always makes things worse. Whereas responding is strategic, it's measured, and it comes from already having decided what you'll do before the actual crisis hits. What does an actual plan look like? And there's a few things that every business needs to have figured out before a crisis hits. First, know who speaks for your business. When something goes wrong, there should be one voice, not three people posting different responses, team members going rogue with comments across Reddit or Trustpilot or whatever platform it is that you've been attacked on, but rather one designated person who owns the communication. Second is going to be to know the platforms you're monitoring. You can't respond to something you don't see coming. Now, Google Alerts for your brand name is a good start, but it's really kind of basic. We actually built an in-house brand monitoring tool here at Media Removal that alerts our clients of any sort of negative sentiment that's been posted about their brand across multiple platforms, including Google, Trustpilot, Reddit. And so the faster you know, the faster you can act, which is ultimately going to give you an advantage, especially in this crisis. Third is going to be to have your response framework ready to go. Not a script, but an actual structure. So that's going to be things like, what's your tone going to be? What are you acknowledging? What are you not going to engage with? Where are you going to take the conversation? Is it going to be handled publicly? Will it be handled privately? Asking the client to reach out to you directly to a dedicated email or maybe some sort of communication channel. But you really want to have that framework planned and decided ahead of time rather than having to scramble last minute and figuring out who communicates, what are they saying, what's the tone, what are we engaging with, what are we not. Really, you're going to find yourself in more of just kind of a bigger problem without having planned anything before any sort of crisis hits. And fourth is going to be know what your narrative is. So when a crisis hits, the goal isn't just to put out the fire, it's to replace the negative story with an actually stronger one. That means having your positive content, your proof points, and your brand story ready to deploy immediately across all platforms. Now, here's what your plan should include specifically for social media. Social media is where crises spread the fastest and where most businesses end up making a pretty fatal mistake. The first mistake is responding too quickly without actually thinking, and I know this is tempting. It's in the moment, maybe you're upset about the accusations that are flowing around, or maybe you feel betrayed by the person you know is starting this smear campaign. And it's very easy to react emotionally, but in reality, that's actually going to make things worse because you're not in a clear headspace. You might start barking out things that you really don't mean, and it's just going to position yourself to even be an easier target as the crisis progresses. And really, your response is going to become part of that story. So just to avoid it altogether, never respond emotionally. And this just kind of applies to any sort of negative reviews as well in general. It's always best to kind of take a step back, internalize with your team, figure out a plan on how to address the situation, and then move forward accordingly. And then really the second mistake is going to be not responding at all. And so that almost makes things just as worse. Not saying anything at all really positions you to be guilty of whatever you've been accused of, because now we have, the emotional responses, which sure, those can be tied into the story and make things worse, but then not responding at all kind of just proves the point of the negative smear campaign. So the right approach is going to be somewhere in the middle. You really kind of want to acknowledge it quickly, keep it brief, and then take it offline as soon as possible. And what I mean by that is encourage the negative reviewer, or if you know who's running this smear campaign on you, to bring it offline, to bring it just between you and them. Keep it very private, very personal, one-on-one. We don't want this blowing out of proportion more so than it already is. Even just one public response that says something along the lines of, we're aware of this, we're handling it internally, we're deeply sorry that you've encountered this sort of experience at XYZ company, etc. And then I would immediately reach out to the unsatisfied client and try and resolve things as quickly as possible. Speed is our friend here. And so really the businesses that handle these kind of crises most effective are going to be businesses that have these structured plans that are built out, pre-planned, and ready to deploy upon any given notice. And then my fifth point, how do we actually know if the plan is working? And probably one of the most important points here, we can have the structured framework laid out, ready to deploy for when crap hits the fan. But at the end of the day, that means pretty much nothing if it's not actually working, if we're not actually moving the needle or improving the crisis or trying to decrease the severity of that crisis. So here's just a couple of points I think we should go over in terms of measuring whether or not this plan actually works. The thing with crisis communication is it's an ongoing process. It's not just going to be a one-time fix. It's not going to be you publishing a few articles across some PR sites or maybe responding once or twice and then never touching the crisis again. We actually need to track what things are moving. And that's going to be things like, how is my SERP movement? Has anything changed over the last 4 to 5 weeks? Have we been able to suppress any negative links? Is the sentiment changing across social media, Reddit, Instagram, Facebook? Are the attacks slowing down, or are they escalating? And so really these are going to be signals that tell you whether or not your strategy is working, whether we need to make adjustments or go all in on what you have been doing over the past couple of weeks, couple of months, maybe even up to a year. And one thing, just so we're all on the same page, is recovery is not going to be overnight. It's certainly not going to be a couple of weeks. And honestly, I would say at minimum, it's going to be a 6-month plan. But really, we want to be able to make sure that we're able to measure the results, whether it's bi-weekly, maybe we're doing a monthly, just so that we understand what's working, what's not working, what we can do to help systemize the process, and just make sure that we're doing everything in our power to try and fight back against this crisis. And so if you're 3, 4, even 5 months into the strategy and nothing's moving, probably tells you that we'd need to adjust the strategy and figure out a couple of different avenues we could take. And so there it is. Just to recap, guys, a crisis communication plan should never be unexpected, you scrambling around trying to figure out what you're going to say, who you're going to delegate that to across the team. This should be something that is pre-planned before anything ever happens. That way you know exactly what the structure looks like, know who speaks for your business, monitor your brand across all platforms, have your response framework in place, ready to deploy, and make sure your narrative is strong enough to take back ground when you need it most. If you want to know what your brand looks like right now and whether or not you are prepared for any sort of reputational crisis, I'll drop a link in the description there. Go ahead and click that. We'll take a look and help you out. And maybe you're actually in the middle of some sort of reputational crisis for you or your brand. Our team's handled dozens of these cases before, so fill out that form and we'll take a look at the damage that's been done and then get back to you with a realistic plan moving forward, whether it's going to be a 6-month plan, a year-long plan. But just to note, specifically crisis communication plans do take quite a bit of time depending on the severity of the crisis. That's all for today, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you found it helpful. If you did, drop a comment, like the video, subscribe to the channel, all that jazz, and I'll see you guys in the next one.